This is Nantuck's Lane in Buxted, East Sussex. What might appear to be an ordinary lane in the middle of the English countryside holds a mysterious past. Local folklore tells the story of a woman named Nan Tuck, who many believe to be a witch. Even in 2023, some locals claim that they've seen the ghost of Nan Tuck and claim that she still haunts these lanes today. So it's early in the morning. I've just put out a Facebook post basically asking anyone if they've got any information on the Witch of Nantuck, and I've got a lot of positive feedback back on this. Someone's given me the full story of the ghost of Nantuck, which is very useful. Somebody else has said that they possibly saw the ghost in the 70s. Somebody else has directed me to another Facebook group called Sussex Dialect and Folklore, who might be able to help. The issue was there are so many contrasting retellings of the story. I was eventually put in contact with Steve Law, a local historian who had some highly useful insight.
There are a number of different sources which tell versions of the story of Nantuck.
Sure.
And it seems that some of these kind of accounts are all originating from the same original sources. And so I guess what we're trying to look for here is to see what there is in those stories that has got some kind of commonality, and how much, and explore each of those facts, if you like, and see what can we devise from that might actually have some grounding in truth.
So what are the theories? Well, firstly, there's the idea that she was a witch fleeing some sort of oncoming mob, and she came from Rotherfield.
I suspect that she was probably already a Buxted resident, just a suspicion, and that she didn't run from Rotherfield, because that feels very far-fetched.
Now, there's also theories in this that she fled into a wood, never to be seen again, maybe one of these surrounding me. Now, secondly is the theory of her husband, Mr. Tuck, and that she poisoned him and then fled to her local parish church, and she would have been trying to get there because she could be granted asylum. At the time, if you managed to touch the altar of the church for a period of time, you would be granted a sort of sanctuary. Now, two main theories lead on from that. One, that she did actually make it to the church but was put under trial by water, and another that she never made it to the church and hung herself on a tree.
A trial by water essentially meant that someone suspected of being a witch could be tied up and dunked into a body of water. Sinking to the bottom would indicate that they were innocent, while floating indicated a guilty verdict.
If we're talking about witches, it's probably 17th century, because that was the height of the kind of persecution of witches, which is all very heavily wrapped up in the sort of religious turmoil that was happening in the 17th century. Okay. What we have is we can start to look to see what evidence we have of anyone of that name existing. That's a good starting point. And actually, you know, the best place to start here is parish records. If you look at the very bottom of the page here, Nan Tuck was buried February the 1st, 1662. The other thing that, of course, some of these sources that we're hearing about the legend of Nantuck, they talk about her vanishing and disappearing, never to be seen again. Well, if that's the case, how could you bury her? You're starting to sort of unpick parts of this story, and we're making a huge assumption here that this is our Nantuck. So the fact that it doesn't mention a parent, or it doesn't mention the wife of, kind of suggests that she's on her own. Perhaps she was the old spinster lady that lived down that lane, which was then referred to as Nantuck's Lane, because that's where she lived. Right. And she lived on her own, and you know, the legend is born up the crazy old woman that lives down the lane, sort of thing. And it's used as a cautionary tale to young children, not to stray too far from your parents. Don't forget, the 1660s was a very, very religious time. It was very Puritan at this point in time.
Now, just next to me here is Tuxwood, and it's where many believe that she either disappeared or hung herself. And the first context that we can see of Tuxwood on maps is on an Ordnance Survey map published in 1910, which I've got just here. So could this be the wood where Nantuck apparently met her fateful end?
Then there were the stories of the ghost. I've spoken with a local source who has requested to remain anonymous. They've given me a series of photographs, one which they claim contains the outline of Nantuck's ghost.
But roll forward, then there's the accounts of the ghost. And the ghost, there are sightings, probably the accounts are earlier in the 20th century that people claim that they see Nantuck's ghost, and nearly always it's in the context of a woman that sees the ghost, and the woman doesn't feel any fear. But if men see the ghost, they feel fear. They feel like there's this presence watching them and keeping an eye on them. So there's another theory in all of this, and some of the accounts, that actually this is a woman that perhaps she did murder her husband as she was accused, but the accounts are that she murdered her husband because the husband was oppressive to her, was beating her, and therefore it was self-defence.
So was Nantuck even a witch at all?
I don't think the accusations of being a witch evidently didn't stand true at the time, otherwise she wouldn't be buried in the parish. So I think it's more likely that for some reason the people who knew her possibly were accusing her of a witch, but it didn't come to anything more. And then there's this sort of oral history that's kind of evolved that she sort of demonised her into the story that became popular.
We've got this burial record here. If this was her, and we've got this burial record, do we know where she was buried?
No,
okay.
But I bet you could go and have a look.
Sure.
So within the churchyard, there are old graves that date back to the 17th century. There are a couple in there that you can see. They're quite badly worn. I suspect what you'll probably find, though, is a lot of those graves have been moved over the years. It was quite a while ago. But that's not to say that you pull away a few bits of grass and have a little poke around, you might find a little stone saying AT 1662 on it.
So while we didn't find the gravestone, that's not to say that you can't go and have a look yourself. It feels weird that the woman I've been researching for so long probably rests underneath this graveyard. If you've got any information about Nantuck that you'd like to share, you can leave it in the comments or ping me an email. If you did enjoy this video, please consider subscribing. Elliot, Hartley, Nantuck 2023.